Welcome back, my name is Sifu John Constantine. I'm the Chief Instructor and founder of AMA Wing Chun Kung Fu. So what I want to do in this short video is take you through the basics on how to form the Wing Chun forward stance, which we know as Biu Ma. Stay tuned. Okay, so Biu Ma is a forward thrusting stance and it's used primarily to close the distance to an opponent. There are applications where you can step back to increase the distance or widen the space to an opponent, but it's generally used to press in and maintain that distance between you and your opponent. So what I'd like to do is take you through a couple of exercises that are going to teach you how to move forward and backwards, but most importantly, how to form this stance so that you can then begin to practice all of your basic attacking and defensive techniques with footwork. So the first thing we need to learn is how to stand in this basic stance. So the stance actually gets its name, forward thrusting stance, because number one, you are thrusting or you're driving the stance forward, and you've also got a leg forward, which gives it its name, a forward stance. So what I'd like you to do is open your basic stance with your feet together, like so. And then what I'd like you to do is your first motion is, I want you to actually pivot on the ball of your foot and I want you to bring the heel inwards like so. That would be step number one. Step number two is I want you to take your shoulders, because they'll be positioned off at 45 degrees, and I want you to take them and position them forwards to the front over the lead leg. And as you'll do this, you'll feel like that your lead leg is actually in the way. And it is, because your toes are in line and your heels are in line. So what I want you to do from that position is take your lead leg and slide it over and across so that it's in line with the heel and the toe. And what this actually does, this gives you better balance and stability because it's spreading the base, which means you've got a much more well-balanced place or position of the feet so that you can step forward and back. So that would be your next step as such. Then from that position, all I want you to do is just take your hands forward and form a centerline guard. So let's go through those basics again so that you can grasp hold of these basic concepts. Now that you know how to form the basic stance Biu Ma, we're going to actually get you moving, we're going to actually get you stepping forwards and backwards. Now, I don't actually have a lot of room in this place where I train, so what I'm going to do is I'm only going to do one or two steps, but if you've got the room, then I recommend you go up and down a hall or a training area, or if you're outside in a park, I recommend you do a minimum of 10 steps up and 10 steps back on each side so that you can really feel that you're doing the correct step in action. So what you would do is you would open your basic stance like so, circle forward to Biu Ma, and you just want to go through the checklist. You want to make sure that your toe and your heel are in line with each other. You want to make sure that your legs are bent. You want to make sure that your hip is tucked under in a posterior tilt. You're going to get a nice stretch across the hip flexors, which is going to support your lower back. You want to make sure that your shin is vertical to the floor. Your weight is predominantly sitting to the back, but the more experience you get, the more you will go to a 50-50 weight distribution. The rear heel is remaining flat as you step, but again, with experience, it's going to raise as well. And your hands are forward in a centerline guard with your elbows. Your lead hand is approximately a fist and a half distance away from your body, and your rear elbow is about a fist distance, and your hands are up. Your rear guard is around the throat and chin area, and your front hand, the fingertips, are on your eye line. So you're here and you're creating this wedge, this strong shape which is going to deflect off any strikes to the centre line. So there's no real reason to block and chase punches at the moment. You just want to control the centre line and you want to place your hands forward. So you're in this position and you've got a nice little spring and bounce in your step. What I want you to do is to initiate the movement. I want you to begin pushing through the floor, and as you do that, you take a step forward about the same size as your foot, and you land on the ball of your foot, and then you drag the rear leg up through powerfully. So I'm not actually having my hands up at the moment because I'm teaching and guiding you through a process or a movement, but generally what you're looking for is a push, step and slide, step in action. So I'll do that again. So you're here, you push and you slide. So the terminology that I might use when I'm teaching this technique is you step and slide, or you push, thrust and step and slide. However I language it is not really important. The bottom line is the theory of footwork states that in order for you to move forward, you want to make sure that you move the foot closest to the direction of travel. Likewise, when you step back, if I want to move back, I push off the front leg and I step with the rear leg and I slide the front leg up, again to form that forward stance position. So when you're training this and you're going up the hall, you want to make sure that after 3 or 4 steps, you go back to Yichi Kim Ying Ma and you just check that you're sitting down in the stance, the feet positions are correct, the weight distribution shifting to the back, to the centre. You want to make sure that all these basic principles that you've now learned from the basic stance are transferable to the forward stance and obviously the circle stance or the circle step. So we're building and using that foundation with the techniques or the concepts and the principles that you know. So just to recap, with the lower section, the step in action, I just want you to make sure your toes and heels are in line with each other. You're pushing, you're stepping, and you're sliding. And that would complete what we would call one Biu Ma or one step in action. Now that you have the basic feet, the basic step in actions, you know where the weight needs to be, you know the position of your legs and your feet in relation to your upper body, we now want to actually step with the lead guard forward, and we want to actually learn to unlock the hips a little bit and obviously learn to bring the hips into the action so that you develop a strong shape and a strong frame. So what I want you to do is when you're in this position, again, check that your heels and your toes are in line with each other. Make sure your legs are bent, your shin is vertical, your hips are tilted underneath like so. The weight distribution's to the rear, but it's going to shift 50-50. So from there, I want you to push and step. And we'll just do that again. So I'm just doing one step for you. You're here, you're going to step like so. So notice when I'm stepping, my hips are not moving at the moment, okay? I'm just taking what we would call a thrusting stance or a thrusting step forward to press in on my opponent's guard because they might be shifting back, or I might want to do something and actually press forward and put them under some kind of pressure to do something. So you're here again like so, you step. Then what I want you to do is, when you're stepping forward, to train in a very fixed way to develop an idea of something, what I want you to do is, as you step, I want you to unlock your hips like so. So from there, you just unlock your hips. And what that enables you to do is to press the rear heel into the floor and then drag the rear heel up. So try this for yourself. When you're stepping forward, is your rear heel rising or is it staying pressed into the floor? The chances are, in my experience, a lot of people naturally raise the rear heel, which is, again, it's the right thing to do because you want to be dynamic and you don't want to be too fixed and static on the floor. So you are naturally going to move that way, but what we want to do is we want to start strengthening the hip and we actually want to press the rear heel in the floor to get you grounded, to get you to sink to the floor and develop a strong shape and a strong frame when you're moving forward. When you've got that concept and you can do it consciously and deliberately, it's only then that I'm going to ask you to break the rules or come up with your own rules on how you want to train and practice and do something in application. So for this little subtlety, when you step forward, unlock your hips and then drag and do a very deliberate step and slide forward. It's quite robotic, but it's a great way for you to isolate, train and develop the body mechanics that you're going to need, so that when you do start using this footwork, you're going to be moving like a fencer. You're going to be light on your feet, but you can also be strong and brace against and hold against attacks to the front if you need to. So just to recap, from this position, take a step forward, push through the back leg, unlock the hips, press the rear heel into the floor, and then drag that rear hip and rear leg forward like so. And it will develop your shape and frame within the stance. So another concept that I want to touch on with the basic stance, and my students will tell you this, when I put my hands forward and I'm stepping forward, I'm actually breaking their guard without me pretty much doing anything. And it's generally coming from my waist, it's coming from the way that I use my hips and my shoulders to break a line that will allow me to strike forward without me using park sail and larp sail. The way that we do that, or to first become aware of it, because your guard is all about distance to your opponent. You're always relating and getting feedback as to how close you are so that you can use your hand techniques. So what I want you to do is, when you take that step forward, as you square up, I want you to sink with your guard to break your opponent's guard down so that you can hit with the rear guard. I haven't got a partner at the moment to show this or demonstrate this, but at some stage I will do partner training exercises so that I can illustrate and actually paint a picture so that you can get hold of the idea. So for the time being, when you step forward, what I want you to do is unlock your hips, and when you lock your hips, I want you to sink and drop your centerline guard down so that you can obviously create a line for you to attack. At the same time, when you're stepping backwards, and your partner will feel this a lot more, as you take that step backwards, you square up your hips, you square your shoulders, and you sink down onto people's guards, and it causes the guard to break. So you want to actually develop your ability to step powerfully with the stance, use your hips and your shoulders to sink down on your opponent's guard and make it extremely difficult and uncomfortable. So follow those ideas. When you're stepping forward, use your hips and your shoulders, and when you're stepping backwards, use your hips and your shoulders. Keep your rear heel pressed into the floor. Please keep your legs bent. Lower your center of gravity. Bend the thumb. Keep the small finger tight to the centerline guard. And amongst anything, when you're stepping forward, do not allow this angle to change when you're stepping forward. So what do I mean by that? When you're in this position, if I step forward, do not break the distance unless you want your opponent to believe that you're closer. To only do that if you're setting something up. But when you do step forward and you're training shapes, you're training concepts and ideas, if this is your centerline guard position, however it is for you, when you step forward, you drive forward and you keep that position of your elbow, because that has everything to do with the distance that you are becoming familiar with. I'm going to give you one last point. When you do step forward, I get asked this a lot, is it okay to step on the heel of the front foot instead of the toe of the big foot? And I would say it's probably better to land on the toe. However, it's not the end of the world if you do land on the heel. So this is what I mean. So when you step forward, Do I step nice and light using the toes, or do I step and go heel to toe? So neither is right or wrong as such. All I would say is when you step on the heel, when you take a step forward and you step on the heel to the toe, I just want you to make sure that you are not straightening your lead leg when you step forward, because somebody could fall on it and it will pretty much just wreck your leg. So you might often hear me say, do not become a heel stepper, which means you're thrusting your stance forward and you're stepping on the heel as opposed to the ball of the foot. So the ball of the foot, in my opinion, it's the better action or idea to train and develop. At the same time, when you're stepping forward, press the rear heel firmly into the floor. It's going to get you grounded, it's going to get you stronger. But when you go into the second form, when you become a Chung Kyu training student, you are actually encouraged to lift the rear heel, because it's probably the best thing to do. It's the most natural thing to do when you're stepping forward. So try those ideas, and if you've got any comments, please leave them below and I'll do my best to get back to you as quickly as possible. So there you have it. Biu Ma is a simple method of footwork used to judge, maintain, control the distance and actually close the distance between you and an opponent. Practice those drills, and in the next session I'm going to be taking you through the circle step. Take care.